All right. Well, thank you so much, David. And thank you and Vishali and everyone just for this invitation for this webinar. We're really excited about the invitation. And Liz and Sal, let me just say that was a wonderful presentation. And it's really a great segue into special events and the going from the checklist process down to the planning and the execution. So thank you for that great setup. And so for the time that Tom and I have, our goal really is to provide you with a very high level overview of DDOT's inauguration planning and operation efforts, really focusing on the bullets that you see there. And Tom, you can move to the next slide. Focusing on these agenda items, everything focusing on specific functions and tasks, our need to pivot, and also the importance of an event evaluation, which obviously for an after action, for an event like this, an after action is a critical component. And so between myself and Tom, we have over 16 years of inauguration experience. And then one of the things I will tell you from the beginning is no inauguration is the same. They're very unique, they're very different, and the 2025 did not disappoint. And so what you're looking at now is really the overview or the structure of planning. There are 5 major planning committees that really make up this structure. And this is really important. This is the first thing that we really do when we talk about planning is understanding the structure in which we're operating in. And so just very quickly, I'll run through some of these. You'll see the President Inaugural Committee, the PIC. This is the responsible committee for planning and coordinating all of the official activities and events for the inauguration. And this committee actually is established last because it's predicated on the selection of a president. The next is the U.S. Secret Service. This is the lead agency for this national special security event, and it establishes committees for federal agency coordination. One of the things I want to underscore here is that the Secret Service is responsible for establishing the security perimeter, which really serves as the operational foundation of the inauguration. So everything is really built out from the perimeter. The next committee is the DC PIC, responsible for establishing committees for the district agency coordination. And this is led through the mayor's office. And as you can see, there's a transportation subcommittee that was run through myself, our director, and Tom. Next is the Joint Task Force National Capital Region. This entity is responsible for all the military support to ceremonies around the inaugural period. And then last is the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the JCIC, and it's responsible for planning and executing the execution of the swearing-in ceremonies. So that's really just to give you an overview of the structure in which we're operating in. Next slide, Tom. So historical data really is a critical component in the planning process for us. We look at previous trends really to assist our efforts in building out our operations plan. So whether it's looking at attendance, the metro ridership, or even temperatures and precipitation, which really played a part in this year's inauguration, it is critical to ensure that there is just a level of contingency planning that's built into our plan. And we do that by looking back at some of our previous inaugurations. The one thing I do want to underscore here is that we relied heavily and leveraged the 2009 Obama inauguration plan. It really served as our playbook, allowing us to do a lot of estimating, particularly with our budget, which was an early request, as well as staffing and resource needs. Next slide, Tom. So the inauguration, believe it or not, the inauguration is a multi-day event. My kids tease me all the time. They're like, all of this work for one day. But I always let them know it is more than a one-day event. It is a multi-day event with events that are across the city and even outside of the DC boundaries. And so what I would say is, this plethora of events and activities results in DDOT having a very large operational footprint. And each event that you see on the screen really does require an action. It requires coordination by the department. So whether we're talking about road closures or whether we're talking about emergency parking signs being hung up, all of these are incorporated into a staffing and resource component plan of our overarching plan. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tom, who will delve a bit more into our operations and our tasks.
Yeah, so this is more of the planning involved in what we do here. DDOT, as far as the parade route preparation, repairing a lot of the different roadway structures in the area to ensure that everything is functioning properly. Charter bus strategies, ADA shuttle strategy. We designed and installed over 15,000 wayfinding signs, more than 12,000 emergency no parking signs alone. We deal with, obviously, same as New Jersey, rideshare, micromobility, and then a lot of special event space permits. We handle all of the public space permitting in the District of Columbia. That's all that's we're warming up for the inauguration itself. During the inauguration, as things get moving, we remove signage, we remove traffic signals. We put up parade route flags, we mark the roadways. We do a security sweep of all the different assets in the area. This includes going around with the Secret Service and securing sewer tops. Every single thing that involves electronics in the security perimeter has to be searched and sealed. This includes parking meters. This includes the electrical boxes next to every traffic signal at every intersection. These things are inspected, checked for anything that may be dangerous, and then they are marked as sealed. We handle all of our traffic incident management stuff. And then we do a work moratorium, suspending all construction work and public space work in the inaugural security perimeter. And then as we move to after, we have to basically by the next morning following the inauguration, we have to replace traffic signals along Pennsylvania Avenue. And then as the days go on, we remove all the signage and start to get things back to normal. This includes also reinstalling bike lanes. This timeline breaks down our personnel assignments and tasks during the multi-day event. And believe me when I say the events listed here are just the tip of the iceberg. Almost every hotel room in DC and the surrounding area was reserved, and there were dozens of receptions late into the night that required additional security protocols. Pennsylvania Avenue alone. With regard to the inaugural parade route preparation, DDOT's efforts began in September of 2024. Our operations chief likes to emphasize the fact that Pennsylvania Avenue is the most paved road in the United States. Every 4 years, it is milled and resurfaced. In addition to that, we restored more than 25 sidewalks, repaired 75 lights that were in the area that were out or damaged. We added in towable lighting towers. We also repaired and restored a lot of infrastructure for the National Park Service. Again, we did the security sweep with our Secret Service partners and our law enforcement partners. Public space inspections. We want to make sure that during major events like this, that all construction sites are secure, that their equipment is secure, that there aren't any items in construction sites that people can pick up or remove or throw. And then, of course, our sign fabrication, again, over 15,000 signs and a lot of different installation procedures that we go through. On the left is a picture of Pennsylvania Avenue prior to Inauguration Day. You can see all the street lights, all of these things get removed. All the stanchions that you see along the road, the bike lane infrastructure gets removed. And this is what it looks like for the parade. This gives you an idea of the perimeter for the entire event. The National Mall sits in this pink area. This is the Capitol building. Lincoln Memorial is over here. To give you a reference, from the Lincoln Memorial all the way over to the east side of the Capitol is more than 2.7 miles. When you think about this perimeter that wraps all the way around here, goes above our convention center and around, more than 30 miles of security fencing was installed in the district. This detailed map was pushed out to the public through multi-agency coordination to include the U.S. Secret Service, the district's official inaugural website, and the president's inaugural committee. This shows signed walking routes from various parking areas, from various metro stations. It also shows our egress routes in case of some type of an emergency evacuation. It shows the metro station closures for the National Mall. Some of the stations were closed, others were left open or partially open. It included the rideshare locations, taxi stand locations, and then also our main charter bus parking area over here at RFK Stadium, and our shuttle route that ran through from that location. And I'll get into a little more detail with that shortly. As you look at the rideshare and taxi locations, we worked very closely with Uber, Lyft, and other vendors to provide as many drop-off points as we could that were close to the secure area of the perimeter. This is a bit of a challenge because we wanted to make sure that all these different locations didn't disrupt any type of normal traffic flow that wasn't already hindered by the size of this event as it was going. Next, we deal with the micro-mobility, the e-bikes and e-scooter restrictions. DDOT has full oversight of all electric bike and scooter operations in the district. Devices are restricted in the pedestrian zones. So this red area, beginning on January 17th, so 3 days before the inauguration, this area becomes restricted, meaning that up until the day of the inauguration or the night before the inauguration, e-bikes and e-scooters can pass through these locations, but they can't stop. So basically anybody riding in there would get a little bit of a warning on their bikes or scooters that would send them back outside of that secure area. These perimeters changed around a good bit in working with our law enforcement partners to ensure security. We worked with Secret Service to make sure that over 2,000 of these devices were removed from this secure area. And all in all, just so you have an idea of the ridership, more than 8 million rides per year alone happen on over 10,000 of the capital rideshare bicycles that we have. So you can imagine how much more that is when you start to add in the other vendors and devices. Charter buses. Bus parking became one of our biggest challenges. We needed to identify roughly 2,000 spaces in the area so that we could manage the traffic flow within the district. RFK Stadium, which you see here, in prior inaugurations would hold more than 1,500 buses on its own. Well, it's currently in a demolition phase. A lot of the parking lots have been removed. They put in a few soccer fields and things like that. And others are in pretty bad disrepair. So this inauguration, the parking for the RFK Stadium was limited to about 600 to 700 buses. So we worked with the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority to identify metro stations outside of the district that we could park additional buses and encourage people to ride the metro trains, the mass transit into the inaugural site. This was cumbersome in a way. It took us a while to really get everybody on board. We worked with a parking contractor to put up a registration site online. This is one of the things that will be addressed a lot earlier in our planning process. In addition to the buses, since RFK Stadium holds the largest amount of buses, we created an ADA shuttle along with a circuitous route that would assist with the metro station that was located at RFK Stadium so that it wouldn't get too overcrowded. Plus, it's kind of hilly right around here. So anybody with any type of difficulty in terms of walking or whatever could use these ADA shuttles to go back and forth to an area south of the secure area in the for the inauguration. Now I will turn it back to Natalie to talk about some of the signage.
All right, thanks, Tom. So yeah, so the signage program really was a major component of our efforts. And this really was an effort to ensure real-time public-facing communication. And so as a result of that, I think Tom mentioned, we put in place over 15,000 signs. And so when you're looking at the signs here, it's really, we had two sort of distinct components. First, there were directional signs. So we're really talking about the wayfinding, the ones for the most part that you're seeing there, how to get to the National Mall, how to get down to the RFK Stadium, how do I get to a warming site? Okay, so this was about navigating people to specific areas. And then the second was really about parking management, emergency no parking signage. And this was important because we wanted to make sure people in advance, particularly people living in the district, that they had enough notice to know that they should not be parking in certain areas. So this was an effort that was done way in advance, again, making sure there was a love of communication with the public. What I will say, I guess, about the signs is that this really is just a small subset of the larger inauguration signage effort that was in coordination with Secret Service, in coordination with the Joint Congressional Committee, and also with the Secret Service. And then lastly, one of the things I like to stress is when we think of the signage and thinking about the inauguration, it really is partially a walking event. Whether you're walking to and from a metro, whether you're walking down to the mall, all of this is in part to be able to communicate in real time, but also is information that we like to share beforehand. So when people are coming into the city, they can expect or have an expectation to be able to know that they'll be able to traverse the city and know where they're going. And this is also important because as we talk about messaging, I know Sal and Liz talked a lot about their variable message boards as well. So this is just a subset of the signage. We also had an undercurrent of that with our actual variable message boards as well. So again, communication really being at the forefront. Next slide, Tom. And so as we've talked throughout this process, there are just a number of partners. Tom mentioned just recently about the buses being parked at Metro, and Metro WMATA is really a major partner with us. And so one of the things that was important for us is any information that was coming through Metro, we wanted to get that information up front. So for instance, with WMATA, they closed a total of 5 of their Metro stations due to the location that was established near the security perimeter. And then other stations, while they were open, there may have been, say, an entrance or an exit that was closed, again, because it abutted to that location. Our main focus, again, really is about just the communication and making sure this type of information for people who are traveling into the city, that not only made it onto our website, the district's website, but also onto other websites so people could pre-plan their trip to the district. Next slide, Tom. And so that was the rail side, but also there's obviously the Metro bus operations. And so there were over 40 bus routes that were detoured due to these routes traversing into the established security perimeter. And so where does this really intersect with our plan? Well, many of these adjustments and these detours actually resulted in coordination of traffic management on our secondary routes. They were having to do turnarounds. And so again, that put an additional requirement in terms of our DDOT staffing and something that we really had to account for in our plans. Next slide. So the map here really demonstrates the full breadth of our operation and deployments across the district, even into Virginia. We had close to over 450 employees scheduled to work the inauguration. And then we also had over 200 National Guard men and women supporting traffic management. And that really was in addition to the other hundreds of guardsmen and women supporting the district overall. As you look at these different blocks, you'll see operations from our traditional field operations. We staffed 3 emergency command centers. We had our tunnel team that was a major part of this. We had an overarching ambassador program that was just leading all of our customer service. So again, it really shows the breadth and the full footprint of our operation. Next slide, Tom. So what you're seeing here, Tom talked quite a bit about the outdoor perimeter. He talked about it being over 2 miles wide. And just to put that into context for you, But this visual, in my opinion, really does show a pivot that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And it's really about how we went from an an outdoor event to an indoor event. And so while the perimeter did shrink, we landed in a place in the city where there was a lot more traffic. And so that in itself really required a lot more coordination as a result of our plan. What am I speaking of? Well, what I will share with you is that 2 days before, or 3 days before our event, we got notice that there would need to be a pivot, that the inauguration was looking to do some changes. The actual swearing in moved indoors, and the actual parade route moved inside to the Capital One Arena, which is located mid-center. So this pivot really did result in the scaling down of our operation, which was not necessarily a bad thing, but it was something that we needed to pay attention to. And so as a result, there were a number of changes, starting with the perimeter. No longer was focused on the mall area, flipped to mid-city, where it was traditionally a more densely trafficked area. The parade was moved indoors. What did this mean for us? Well, this required new traffic management plan and really a pedestrian plan as well. Because for those coming to the parade, Secret Service had to set up an area a couple of blocks away from the Capital One Center to do all of their screening. And then we had to have a plan to move people over to the venue where they could actually enter into the Capital One Arena. Tom talked about the ADA shuttle. There was no need for the ADA shuttle because, again, that was going down towards the mall. And then the wayfinding, the signage. Some of that we were able to repurpose, but most of that required, because of the new footprint, we had to install additional no parking signs. I think the greatest challenge, I would say, was probably the staff deployment. There were significant changes. This was an overhaul to our staffing plan, with a focus on our traffic control officers, a focus on our National Guardsmen placement. And I'm just going to do a real shout out to the T.Y. Lin consultant team, who I know is on here, led by Shoma Day. We could not have done this significant change without that team. And then lastly, just the micromobility that Tom did talk about. You know, we had to reevaluate and reconstitute the areas of geofencing in the devices. And so before we move to that last slide, Tom, again, just when we talk about what are the subtle changes of those two, you know, to me, there was just the visual of these two, the previous two maps was just very stark. We had one that was planned over a course of 4 months with a 2-mile perimeter radius, and the other planned over the course of 3 days with a much smaller perimeter, but established in a more heavily dense business district. And so I can tell you, and Tom will share with you, there were a lot of lessons learned. I'll turn it back to you, Tom.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the after action and lessons learned. What went well? Well, DDOT's capacity to pivot when necessary. Natalie mentioned we had 3 days for a switch. The switch was caused by weather. It got very cold, very windy. So the inaugural committee and the president decided to move the swearing in indoors, cancel the outdoor parade, cancel the outdoor presence of the public on the mall area. So that entire area was closed. We used GIS to map the events and our assets. I'm going to display that in a moment when I switch over to another screen. The use of SharePoint as a repository for documents and planning elements. We had tons of information pouring into our SharePoint site. We had frequent meetings, both with all of the different agencies that were working together. We worked with more than 70 different agencies. There are more than 70 law enforcement agencies in the district alone. And then, of course, communication with our internal and external partners. On that note, I will say that you heard my bio. I worked in law enforcement for over 26 years here in the district, and then moved over here to DDOT. This was my 9th inauguration that I've been involved with. And without question, the U.S. Secret Service really stepped up the communication level for this inauguration. It was outstanding the way that the U.S. Secret Service helped and worked with other agencies to coordinate everything. And that's a communication that was really lacking in the past. So big shout out to the Secret Service for this inauguration and this planning effort. What didn't go well? Unclear expectations. So this year, Natalie and I led the coordination of the inauguration. Past inaugurations were run by our operations division. There has been an overwhelming turnover here at DDOT over the last 7 to 8 years. So the majority of the leadership during the inaugurations that occurred from 2017 and before weren't here to really help with the planning process. 2021 for Biden's inauguration was during COVID. So it really didn't happen. Nothing happened. The planning effort was relatively simple. So we were looking back at our old plans, 2017 and before. Obama, of course, we always planned for the biggest inauguration, and that's the way it's going to work going forward. But that turnover led to a lot of really having to redefine whose roles, who was responsible for what roles. And if you were to look at the task list that we have for all the different items that we have to check a box off of for everything that DDOT does during the inauguration, we have more than 75 different things that we have to take care of. Of course, all the details that I went through before with Pennsylvania Avenue alone, but also the bikes, the buses, and everything else. So we actually were working kind of from scratch for this. It would have been nice. What didn't go well? Advanced planning for extreme weather. Yeah, we did it in 3 days. So, you know, it was a good pivot. We had our plan, but it was more of, it would have been a lot easier to define which things we were going to cut out if we needed to do so for extreme weather changes. We did still keep the number of traffic control officers and things like that. We didn't change that number because it was cold out. So essentially what ended up happening is we were doubling and tripling up different locations so that people can get more breaks so that they weren't as exposed to the weather. Things that we could be doing better, planning earlier. Again, with the turnover, we really needed to, Natalie and I really needed to step in and take over the role of running the inauguration for DDOT. It was a very good, although very tiring experience. The use of previous inaugurations to set operations and expectations. Yeah, we did that as best we could. The future will bring better things. One of the things that I emphasized in every single meeting we had, both with just DDOT personnel and with all the other agencies, was succession planning. Succession planning is so important in these things. When you go to these meetings, you can't just be your sole representative. You need to bring somebody with you to these meetings that is somebody that's moving up in the organization, or somebody that may be handling your position in the future. I can't emphasize it enough. And also to document every single thing that goes on. What we're planning to do for the next inauguration, and it's already in process, is from our task list of those 75 items, each person that was responsible for each task, we've had them do after action review, of course, and then to detail step by step everything that they went through during this process to complete that task. Those tasks are going to be combined into a playbook for future inaugurations, so that next time, if somebody new comes along and they don't know what to do, they can go to that playbook and look at step-by-step instructions on what it is they need to do, who they need to contact, those types of different things. And that becomes a big part of coordination with external agencies. We have so many different transportation agencies in the region. We would have more than 70 different agencies on every single one of our transportation subcommittee calls that we were coordinating with in different aspects, to include snow removal plans and all these things. And then, of course, managing those partners. Like I mentioned before, we had some challenges with some of the bus parking things, and we learned through a lot of pushing and shoving that sometimes you need to hit different organizations from a lot of different directions to get to the right people to make things happen, and make things happen faster than they happened before. All right, I'll move on. And what I'm going to do is give you a brief showing of our web map. that we moved to. So let me switch screens here and get out of that. So this is our SharePoint site. This is the SharePoint site that we created. We created a document library. We do have documents on here now that run all the way back to 2009 inauguration. We created a hot wash survey for immediately after the inauguration itself. We had our people that were working do a hot wash so that they could give us their immediate reactions as to what happened. Our indoor operations plan, our outdoor operations plan, and then we went to our operations maps. The task list, this is the task list that I was talking about. I'll hit it real quick just so you can get an idea. If it'll load fast enough, there we go. It gives you kind of an idea of everything that we were doing, more than 75 items. Now let's touch the map. Again, for point of reference, Lincoln Memorial over here, Capitol over here, 2.7 miles in this area. As we start to work through this, more reference, Union Station, the Capitol building, and the White House are here. Pennsylvania Avenue, we talk about where the flags were installed. It's over 400 flags. This is the area that's repaved every 4 years. And then this area is where we put a blue line. We paint a blue line along Pennsylvania Avenue up 15th Street for the parade itself. This is the center line for the parade. It's what the military asks us to install so that they know exactly where to run their formations. In front of the White House here, this is National Park Service property. So we had to actually put down blue tape. The blue tape is something that won't paint in because the road surface here in front of the White House itself and in front of the main viewing stand is something that you just don't want to paint, plain and simple. Okay. Let's see, variable message signs. These are all the different variable message sign locations for traffic direction, and then also for the public here, in case there's some kind of an emergency, we can put up messages on those signs to move people to safe haven locations within the district. These locations are places where people can go if they decide not to walk out of the area for temporary relief from any type of major disaster or event that's occurring, or a weather event for that matter. These areas are bridge closures and road closures. We also closed several different tunnels. These are the different walking routes that we had in and out of the area. These are the different Capitol bike share locations we have where we, again, have more than 10,000 Capitol bikes for e-bikes. Metro station closures. See the red are the closures. These ones are the main areas where we were trying to encourage people to go, and the green. And then the purple ones were the ones that had modified places where part of the metro station was open and other parts were closed. Taxi locations all around. There were a lot more that were added for the indoor portion because we had to adjust the perimeter. Let's go into staffing a little bit. Our traffic control officers, our safety technicians and crossing guards. This is, again, was close to 400. National Guard troops that assisted us with some of these intersections. More than 8,000 National Guard troops were involved in the perimeter security and staging areas outside in case of an emergency. Our ambassadors were located at transfer points, which were emergency evacuation transfer points. We also worked with Arlington County, Virginia, to establish another emergency evacuation transfer point. And then we had personnel at our emergency operations centers in the area. Then let's go back to the cordon here. Just so you understand, again, this area was completely restricted to pedestrians, meaning anybody that was entering that area had to be screened TSA style by the Secret Service. This yellow area included everything where vehicles had to be screened. That was subject to search, and all of the fencing that was closed. And then the local traffic zone, there was fencing all the way around this entire area. And the National Guard staged themselves around these areas and checked every single vehicle as we went. That about does it, David.
Thanks, Tom. And you and Natalie highlighted two aspects of all this planned special event stuff that I thought was really good. One was the pivot. There's almost always a pivot. Your best plans, they're just going to change. And so having the expectation that there's going to be a pivot and having backup planning is very critical in delivering safe and successful planned special events like you all do. The other aspect that I really appreciated, and something that I don't think is highlighted enough, but is actually incorporated into our checklist, is weather. It's something that people tend to forget about. So thank you for bringing up that aspect of planning, and also highlighting an opportunity for folks who are involved with planned special events to really start building your relationship with National Weather Service or your third-party weather provider. Having those conversations in the planning stages of a PSE is absolutely critical. Weather by itself can create the pivot, but there's a lot of other things that can create pivots. But I wanted to highlight those two areas that you both very accurately highlighted for us. So thank you. I think at this time, yeah, thanks, Tom. At this time, we actually do have a couple questions in the Q&A pod. So I'll invite Sal and Liz to pop back on camera if you would. The first question is from an anonymous attendee, but it pertains to the World Cup. So with a significant influx of international fans expected for the FIFA World Cup, how is New Jersey DOT planning to manage crowd control in terms of demand management, wayfinding, and parking at both the stadium and the Fan Fest locations? Any response to that, Sal or Liz?
Sure. So one of the things that we have to really consider is the international fan base. One of the things in working with our partners at New Jersey Transit, they had the Copa match last year, and they themselves recognize that an increased multilingual wayfinding approach would be incredibly helpful. We've been very arm in arm with our host city leadership. We have both the New Jersey side and the New York City side. And we recognize that people are going to be coming, like Jimmy and Little Jimmy. They're going to be coming from Long Island. They're going to be coming through New York City. They're going to be coming from upstate, and so on and so forth. And they actually need to have a multilingual effort. Parking is going to be difficult. Let's not sugarcoat it. With the security and the pedestrian perimeters at MetLife Stadium, if you think about it, every host city across the country is going to have some kind of a footprint for security and vehicles and pedestrian security. As the events slowly start to shrink down, the international media is going to be coming to MetLife Stadium. The focus on the World Cup, the largest sporting event ever to be held, the largest sporting event to ever be witnessed, televised, performed, is going to be at MetLife Stadium. There is not going to really be every day, hey, let's get in the car and go see if we can get to the game. It's just not going to happen. Demand management, we want people to be aware and not be scared. The World Cup coming to New Jersey and the associated festivals, the fan events, the events that they're planning surrounding all these types of activities, including the Fan Festival at Liberty State Park. As Liz mentioned, it's an incredibly exciting time to be here in New Jersey with our 250th anniversary, just across the river in Philadelphia with the MLB All-Star Game, with the city of Philadelphia being, where did they all sit there and work through, the Declaration of Independence? I mean, you're talking about, the birth of our nation. There is so much going on that it's going to be tricky. No one's saying it's not. But a lot of the information has to be with communication. You know, as Natalie mentioned, and you folks at the district mentioned, you have to be able to communicate to your audience. I like the static signs you guys put up. We've been talking about what is the best way to approach that from a fan point of view. Do we want the FIFA Cup logo with an arrow inside the transit stations? You know, there are a lot of various scenarios we've talked about, and catering to our international visitors is certainly one of them.
Good answer, Sal. Thank you for your insights on that. Couple more questions. I think the next two are for DDOT. So Natalie and Tom, do you feel the district's laws and regulations requiring TNCs like Uber and Lyft to share data with you were critical for your planned special event success? And if so, how was that helpful?
Absolutely. The having good contacts with the TNCs really makes a difference in our entire planning effort. The ridership data and everything else, we do this. I know you mentioned it before. We have so many special events in DC that this is something that we have to do on a regular basis. We've had our All-Star game. I know our New Jersey folks get theirs this year. We have major demonstrations on a regular basis, major events on the National Mall. Our 4th of July is huge as well, and we establish roughly the same type of security perimeter as the inauguration for that. So yes, working with the TSCs and establishing the different locations on a regular basis really works to our advantage.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Russell Holt, for your question there. One more question that we have is from JD Schneeberger. Can DDOT speak to the coordination with Virginia and Maryland DOTs, and how is that coordination from an ITS and operations perspective leading up to the inauguration?
It's mostly about traffic management, dealing with the bus traffic and all the different road closures. We close a few of the bridges going across from DC to Virginia. We shut down the HOV lanes on the main bridge between DC and Virginia for parade escorts and for dignitary escorts and things like that. We close the tunnels that travel under the National Mall and under the Capitol itself. And needless to say, those are huge traffic routes. So coordination with Maryland and Virginia in terms of rerouting vehicles around the National Capital Beltway and I-95 and several other major routes is pretty important. Natalie, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add that you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, Tom, in both responses is it is so important to have these established relationships. And so we do this sort of interface and coordination on a daily basis, even outside of just a general special event. And so that really sort of supports us when we're looking to now do an event such as the inauguration or even something on a smaller scale. It really is about interoperability. And while our command centers are not necessarily interoperable, the district, Maryland, Virginia, we do share some commonalities. We both are part of what we call the RITIS process. So it gives us real-time travel information that we can share. And so everyone's really much on the same page. And then we also have our cameras, which I want to say we leverage very much throughout the district, not just DDOT, but also our law enforcement, but specifically the 3 DOTs. And that is important because now we have sort of a visual, if you will, a commonality in terms of visuals, particularly when it comes to our infrastructure, our bridges, our roads. Not all cameras in the district can see what's in Maryland and vice versa, but there is some critical infrastructure where all of these DOTs are able to see in real time what is taking place. And so I think just that coordination outside of an event really just plays to our benefit when we are sort of working collectively with these various events. And someone put in there, yes, the MATOP coordination as well. Again, all of these DLTs are part of that MATOP conversation. We have a monthly call with the Council of Governments where all of these representatives and MATOP is there. So again, it's really the conversations that are happening outside of the special event that again becomes the benefit for us when we're planning these events and executing them.
Thank you both. One other thing that Tom mentioned during his presentation that I think is absolutely critical and something that I was going to ask about, but you covered very well, was succession planning. And how do you keep, the inauguration's on a 4-year cycle. You mentioned that DDOT in particular has had very high turnover the last 6, 7, 8 years. And you talked about kind of pulling in other people into meetings, but also your records management with the SharePoint site that you use. Are there any other aspects, and this is for Sal and Liz as well, are there any other aspects that practitioners need to be aware of to share this knowledge for the next group that's coming up for, 2 inaugurations from now, or when the World Cup comes back in 24 years or 30 years? What are you all doing to make sure that that information is archived, but also training the next people that are coming up through your organizations, in particular as they pertain to PSEs? So how do you make sure that the next generation of folks that are coming into your positions are ready and able to learn from all the pains and successes that you've all had?
Yeah, again, like I discussed, the SharePoint site that we have, we've got all of the documents that we could find in the history of DDOT dumped into that site at this point. And as long as SharePoint doesn't go away and we still have them downloaded to thumb drives and things like that, just so that hopefully there'll be some way of recovering all these documents left behind. You said it again, making sure that you bring somebody with you to these meetings, train that next generation, get them involved in these different things. We have so many special events that the more people that can handle these things and the leaders that let people take ownership of roles and allow them to run with these things and make some mistakes, and then you can work with them to correct mistakes. It's all a part of building future leaders and moving into the future that way.
And I would like to sort of add just a point to that. Tom's absolutely right. I think the other thing for us that we recognize is when Tom talks about that lengthy list of tasks, and he's being very modest because those were just the DDOT tasks. There were tasks outside of that we were a support to. So that list was infinite. But I do think I want to just share with this group that when we're talking about as well with this special event and our experience, there are those tasks that fall neatly into sort of the alignment of our department. So every day we do traffic management. Every day we have signal people who are out there. So that's not a new sort of effort. What really becomes that effort, and which is why it is so important to document this and to train someone, is because there are those sort of non-traditional tasks that we had to lead. The chart of us that Tom talked about, the ambassador program, which is like a whole cadre of customer service people. These are not tasks or operations that we do on a daily basis. And so it's important to understand that there's not a built-in part of the agency that we go to say, okay, this is the group that automatically does this. This really gets formed by various people throughout the department. And so I think as we look at, 29? It's important to recognize that those non-traditional tasks will require people who've had some experience, but more than likely have not had the experience because it's not traditionally something that's in our wheelhouse.
Great answer. Thank you. Sal, Liz, did you want to speak to the succession planning or record management or any other aspect that I brought up?
Well, Liz is gonna absolutely be reminded of this. I have a staying here. There are a couple of 3 rules that I have with my staff. Good news first, good news fast, bad news faster. That's always a good one. But there's one that I always really try and reinforce with my people is you never know when you're going to get hit by a bus. You could have best laid plans and be walking to the meeting with your plans and get hit by the bus. And so when they're saying, where's the plan? Well, he got hit by the bus. That could be a number of different references. Someone could get married, win the lottery, decide to retire, move to another country, or something even more unfortunate. We always try to tell our staff, never go to a meeting alone. This way, you are not the only one that heard the story. And if something happens to you, you don't know what the story is. Liz is nodding her head like, yeah, I heard this bus reference
I,
thousands.
I have a backdrop for my meetings with the Cowan Express behind me.
I said
mean-
that bus comment at most meetings myself. Same
But
thing.
it's
Yeah.
important. We were just talking about this the other meeting I was in before. Knowledge management, being able to translate and manage information down. The website you guys showed up, that ArcGIS website, is fantastic. In 5 to 6 years, what's the new version of that going to be? Is ArcGIS the platform you're going to use? We were handed a brand new software package right before the Super Bowl, like 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. We all went like this. No, not 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. You're not giving us something new like that. But our plans are very ICS focused. Liz is the statewide incident management coordinator. We develop plans for everything from the such and such festival to MetLife. We'll have an ICS based plan as we roll up into the state police.
Thank you. Thank you all for a great answer. We got one more question that came in, so let's tackle this for the last couple minutes that we have. How do you all manage public outreach and messaging during planned special event times when so many roads, tunnels, and bridges are closed, but many people in the public can't work from home, they're shift workers, or they need to be somewhere for an appointment? It's a concern for MassDOT, has given that 6 of the 7 World Cup matches are on weekdays with MassDOT. So how do you manage your public outreach and messaging with your PIO offices?
Well, the first thing I would say is when it comes to communication, it's about early communication and often communication. And again, the good news is that the communication piece is not something that's just happens during an inauguration or during a special event. It really is predicated on the building of relationships, whether it's with your business community, your church community, the federal government here. So it's really establishing, in my opinion, that laying down that sort of coordination connection outside of these events. And so when there are events that are in place that will have some adverse impact on whether, as you said, David, on traffic, the infrastructure, there is sort of an expectation on both sides, on the government side, but also on the community side, to be able to have those conversations upfront and personal. I will share with you, we have a great PIO team, as I'm sure in New Jersey as well. And so it is always about making sure that we understand who the stakeholder is that we need to communicate with and how to communicate with that stakeholder, because every stakeholder does not receive the same message the same way, nor do they take that message in the same way. So my advice is always early and often, and then being able to pivot, because sometimes it's real-time communication, and that's when we have to leverage every tool we have in the toolbox to be able to push that communication out in real time.
Anyone else want to tackle that, or did Natalie take care of that answer? It was an amazing answer. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank Tom, Natalie, Sal, and Liz for your time. I know you're all very busy, and just taking an hour and a half out of your day. I know New Jersey DOT is dealing with a sinkhole issue right now. So just taking 90 minutes of your day to share your expertise and insights into planned special events. We thank you very much for doing that. I also want to thank NOCO for hosting us. Always a pleasure dealing with Adam and Nick at NOCO. Thanks again for them to host us. And everybody else in the audience, thank you for the questions that you sent in. It makes for a much better webinar when we have active participation from the audience. So thank you again. If you have any questions for me, my email address was posted in the chat. Always happy to connect with you or talk through planned special events. And if you have technical questions from the speakers, feel free to reach out to them as well. With that, and there's my email. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. With that, I'm going to end the presentation and the webinar. I want to thank everybody that participated, and I hope you all stay safe and take care. Thanks.
Thank you.